In the northern hills of England, where the roads grow narrow and the stone walls disappear beneath winter frost, there lies a quiet little village called Bramblewick. It is not marked clearly on many maps. Most travelers pass by without ever noticing the turning that leads towards it. And in the winter months, that road becomes softer still beneath the falling snow. Tonight, the snow has begun again. Slowly, silently, the kind of snowfall that seems to hush the entire world. The wind moves gently across the open hills, carrying tiny flakes through the darkened lanes and over the sleeping fields beyond the village. And somewhere along that quiet country road, a lone traveler makes their way towards Bramblewick. The hour is late, far later than most people would choose to travel on such a cold December evening. But the old bus from Harrogate had broken down many miles back along the northern road, leaving only a handful of passengers stranded beside the drifting snow. Most had turned back. A few found rides elsewhere. But one traveler continued on foot beneath the lantern glow of the winter night. The snow crunches softly beneath heavy boots. A leather suitcase swings gently at one side. And ahead, through the veil of falling snow, a faint amber light finally appears. Bramblewick. At first, the village seems almost dreamlike. The cottages emerge slowly from the whiteness, their roofs thick with snow, their windows glowing gold against the blue-grey dark. Thin ribbons of chimney smoke rise lazily into the cold night air. Somewhere nearby, a gate creaks gently in the wind. And from farther off comes the distant sound of a church bell. Soft, slow, almost sleepy. The traveler pauses for a moment near the old stone bridge at the edge of the village. Below, the narrow river has begun to freeze along its edges. Dark water slips silently beneath thin sheets of ice while snow gathers carefully upon the frozen reeds nearby. The village appears entirely still. Not abandoned. Not empty. Simply quiet in the way only old English villages can be quiet during winter. As though the snowfall itself has asked everyone to speak more softly tonight. The traveler continues onwards. Boots pressing fresh footprints into the untouched snow. Past low stone cottages. Past iron lanterns glowing beside narrow doors. Past little garden walls buried beneath white drifts. Now and then, movement can be seen behind frosted windows. A figure drawing curtains. A kettle steaming upon a hearth. The faint shadow of someone settling into a chair for the evening. But outside, the streets remain nearly empty. And with every passing minute, the snow falls thicker still. Bramblewick has always welcomed winter early. Long before the neighboring villages see their first frost, snow often settles upon these hills. The people here speak of it casually, as though winter was simply another resident of the village. The baker leaves salt outside his doorway before dawn. Children hang wool scarves beside the schoolhouse radiators. Lanterns are lit earlier and earlier as December deepens. And once the first true snowfall arrives, the village grows quieter than ever. The traveler notices this immediately. There are no raised voices. No bustling pubs spilling laughter into the streets. No carts rattling along the cobbled road. Only the wind. Only the snow. And the warm glow of lamps behind heavy curtains. Ahead, near the center of the village, stands an old inn beneath a swinging wooden sign. The Bramblewick Arms. Golden light spills from its windows onto the snowy street outside. For the first time since arriving, the traveler can hear the faint murmur of voices drifting gently through the storm. A comforting sound. Slow and low like the crackle of a distant fire. The traveler brushes snow from their coat sleeve and climbs the short stone steps towards the inn door. But before entering, they pause once more. Because somewhere nearby, a clock begins striking the hour. 1, 2, 3. The sound drifts slowly across the snowy rooftops. And with each heavy chime, the village seems to fall quieter still. By the final bell, even the wind appears softer somehow. The traveler glances back towards the empty lane. Snowflakes continue spiraling beneath the lantern light. The cottages remain warm and glowing. But not a single soul walks the streets now. And though Bramblewick feels welcoming, it also feels strangely sleepy, as though the village itself is preparing for rest. The inn door opens gently. A wash of warmth spills into the cold night air. And at last, the traveler steps inside. Warmth settles over the traveler almost instantly. After the bitter cold outside, the air within the inn feels wonderfully heavy with heat, candlelight, and the quiet comfort of winter evening routines. The door closes softly behind them, and for a moment, the sound of the wind disappears entirely. Only the crackling of the fire remains. The Bramblewick Arms is small compared with the grand inns of larger towns. But it possesses something far rarer. Stillness, not silence exactly. There are voices here. Gentle voices. Low voices. The soft clink of teacups. The turning of newspaper pages. The quiet shifting of chairs upon old wooden floors. Yet somehow the inn feels peaceful enough that even these small sounds seem careful not to disturb the calm. A long fireplace glows along the far wall, its golden light flickering across dark oak beams overhead. Several villagers sit nearby in deep armchairs, wrapped in thick wool jumpers and winter coats drying slowly beside the fire. Most stare quietly into the flames. One elderly man appears to have fallen asleep with a book resting upon his lap. Near the window, a woman stirs honey into a cup of tea while snow gathers softly against the glass outside. No one seems hurried. No one seems fully awake either. As though the snowfall beyond the windows has slowed time itself. Behind the counter stands the innkeeper. A broad-shouldered woman with silver hair tied neatly at the back of her head. She looks up as the traveler enters and offers a warm, knowing smile. "Evening," she says softly. Her voice carries the calm rhythm of someone who has spent many winters in this village. "You've arrived just before the heavier snow sets in." The traveler removes the gloves slowly, brushing lingering snowflakes from the sleeves of their coat. "I was beginning to wonder if I'd taken the wrong road entirely." They admit. The innkeeper chuckles quietly. Most people think that the first time they come to Bramblewick. She reaches beneath the counter and lifts a small brass key attached to a wooden tag. "You'll be wanting a room for the night, I expect." The traveler nods gratefully. Outside, the wind gives a long, gentle sigh against the windows. The innkeeper glances briefly towards the darkened glass. "It'll snow till morning now," she says. "Perhaps longer." There is no concern in her voice. Only certainty. As though the weather has already decided such things for itself. The traveler signs the old guestbook resting upon the counter. Its pages are thick and yellowed with age. Many names fill the book in faded ink stretching back through decades of winters. Some signatures elegant. Some hurried and crooked. And besides several names, tiny snowflake symbols have been drawn carefully in blue ink. The traveler notices them immediately. Before they can ask about the markings, however, the innkeeper gently closes the book. "You can ask about village traditions tomorrow," she says kindly. "But tonight, I'd recommend tea first." The smell reaches them before the cup even arrives. Black tea. Strong and earthy. With just a little cinnamon. The traveler wraps cold hands around the warm ceramic mug while the innkeeper gestures towards an empty chair beside the fireplace. "Best seat in the house," she says. "Especially on snowy nights." The chair creaks softly as the traveler settles into it. The heat from the fire spreads slowly through tired muscles while outside the storm continues thickening across the village. For a while, nothing much happens at all. And in Bramblewick, that seems perfectly normal. The villagers continue their quiet evening rituals. A man near the fire folds his newspaper with sleepy precision. Someone upstairs crosses a creaking floorboard. Teaspoons clink gently against china cups. Logs settle in the hearth with soft bursts of amber sparks. The traveler feels the long journey slowly drifting away from them. The cold road, the broken bus, the endless hills swallowed by snow. All of it begins to feel distant now. Unimportant somehow. The innkeeper returns carrying a small plate of toasted crumpets thick with butter melting into every corner. "No one sleeps properly in this village on an empty stomach," she says. Again, that curious choice of words. The traveler notices it this time. Sleeps properly. Not rests. Not settles in. Sleeps. Outside, the church bell sounds once more in the distance. Slow. Deep. The villagers barely react. One or two simply glance towards the windows before returning their attention to the fire. The traveler lowers their voice slightly. Does the snow always fall this heavily here? The innkeeper considers the question while polishing a glass behind the counter. Not always, she says. Only after the first true snowfall. And this is the first. Oh yes. She smiles faintly. You can always tell. The traveler waits for her to explain further. But she does not. Instead, she places another log upon the fire. The flames rise warmly into the dim room, casting soft shadows across the ceiling beams overhead. And slowly, almost without noticing, the traveler begins to feel unusually sleepy. Not exhausted. Not ill. Simply calm. Wonderfully calm. The sort of drowsiness brought on by long winters, warm fires, and the steady comfort of snow falling safely outside. Around the inn, others seem affected similarly. The elderly man's book slips lower against his chest. The woman by the window blinks slowly at the drifting snow beyond the glass. Even the innkeeper moves with quieter motions now, as though the entire village were gently preparing itself for sleep together. Outside, Bramblewick disappears deeper into the storm. The lanes soften beneath fresh white drifts. Lantern lights blur behind curtains of falling snow. And overhead, the winter sky grows pale and endless above the silent hills. By 9:30, the inn has grown softer still. Not darker exactly. The fire continues glowing warmly across the room, and candles flicker gently upon the window ledges. But the energy of the evening has begun to fade into something slower. Heavier, the sort of quiet that belongs only to snowy nights. Outside, the storm continues patiently over Bramblewick. Snow gathers along the narrow windowsills, along fence posts, along forgotten garden paths winding between cottages. Each flake settles silently upon the village, covering roofs and roads beneath a growing blanket of white. The traveler watches the snowfall through the inn window beside the fire. From here, the village street appears almost untouched. Only a few sets of footprints remain visible now before fading slowly beneath the drifting snow. The world beyond the glass seems distant somehow, muted, as though Bramblewick has slipped gently away from the rest of England for the night. The innkeeper moves quietly between the tables collecting empty cups. Most of the villagers have already left. Not all at once. Simply one by one. A scarf wrapped carefully. A coat lifted from its hook beside the door. A soft goodnight spoken near the fire. And then each disappears slowly into the snow-covered streets beyond. No lingering conversations. No drunken laughter. No hurried steps. Only sleepy smiles and tired eyes reflecting firelight. The traveler notices something else as well. Every person who leaves glances briefly towards the clock above the fireplace. An old brass clock with long black hands moving steadily through the evening. Its ticking is faint beneath the crackle of the fire. Yet somehow everyone seems aware of it, as though the hour matters greatly here. The traveler sips the last of their tea. The warmth settles pleasantly behind their eyes. Sleepiness drifts through the room like another layer of snowfall. The innkeeper approaches once more carrying a small lantern. "You'll be wanting your room soon," she says gently. But there's still a little time before the village settles. The village settles. The traveler asks quietly. The innkeeper smiles. "You'll understand by morning." Again, she offers no further explanation. But there is kindness in her voice rather than secrecy. As though Bramblewick's little mysteries are not meant to alarm anyone, only to be experienced slowly. The traveler rises from the chair and stretches tired legs near the fire. The floorboards creak softly beneath heavy boots. Near the window, snowflakes drift endlessly through the amber lantern glow outside. The traveler feels drawn towards the glass, towards the peaceful stillness waiting beyond the inn walls. Would it be strange, they ask, to walk through the village before sleeping? The innkeeper thinks for a moment. Then she shakes her head gently. Not strange. Her silver eyes flick briefly towards the storm outside. But don't stay out too long. The traveler nods. A thick wool coat is lifted once more from beside the fire. Gloves pulled on slowly. Scarf wrapped carefully against the cold. The innkeeper opens the door just enough for the traveler to step through. Instantly, winter rushes back around them. Cold air. Soft wind. Snow turning lazily beneath the lantern light. But after the warmth of the inn, the village now feels even quieter than before. The door closes gently behind them. And once again, Bramblewick is almost entirely still. The traveler stands for a moment beneath the hanging sign of the inn. Snowflakes settle softly upon coat sleeves and scarf edges. Far above the rooftops, clouds drift slowly across the pale winter sky. The village road stretches empty in both directions. Not a single voice can be heard now. Only the distant whisper of wind moving through narrow lanes and chimney tops. The traveler begins walking carefully along the snowy street. Boots sink softly into fresh drifts gathered across the cobbles. Many cottages have already darkened for the night. Curtains drawn. Candles extinguished. Only a few windows still glow faintly against the storm. In one cottage, an old woman places another blanket across the back of a chair before extinguishing a lamp. In another, a man closes heavy shutters while a sleeping dog curls beside the hearth. Everywhere, the same gentle feeling lingers. Not loneliness. Not sadness. Rest. Deep winter rest. As though the entire village has agreed to surrender peacefully to the snowfall. The traveler passes the small bakery near the square. Fresh snow has nearly covered the morning's footprints outside the door. Beside the frosted window hangs a tiny wooden sign painted with careful white letters. Closed until the snow settles. The traveler smiles faintly at the message. Further along the road stands the village post office. Dark now. Its roof buried beneath thick layers of snow. A lantern swings gently outside, creaking softly whenever the wind brushes past. Beyond that rises the church tower overlooking Bramblewick. Ancient stone dusted white beneath the storm. The clock face glows dimly through falling snow. 10 o'clock approaches. And with every passing minute, the village grows sleepier still. The traveler notices it in strange little ways. Curtains close almost simultaneously across several cottages. One final lamp extinguishes near the square. Even the wind seems quieter now. Softer. Slower somehow. Then, from somewhere beyond the churchyard, comes the faint sound of singing. Very soft. Almost carried away entirely by the snow. The traveler pauses. Listens carefully. It sounds like a lullaby. Old-fashioned. Gentle. Only a few voices singing together somewhere in the storm. The melody drifts briefly through the village before fading once more into silence. And after it disappears, Bramblewick becomes quieter than ever before. The traveler remains still for several moments after the singing fades. Snow continues falling softly around the empty square. White flakes drift through the lantern glow in slow, endless spirals while the village rests beneath its growing blanket of winter silence. No further sound follows the lullaby. Only the quiet wind moving gently along the rooftops. And yet the traveler cannot shake the feeling that the song belonged perfectly to this place. As though Bramblewick itself had been humming softly before sleep. The church bell marks the quarter hour. A deep, sleepy note rolling out across the snow-covered cottages. The traveler glances towards the churchyard gate. It stands slightly open. Black iron dusted with frost. Beyond it, pale pathways wind between ancient gravestones disappearing slowly beneath the snow. The traveler hesitates only briefly before stepping closer. Boots crunch softly across the frozen ground. The old church of Bramblewick is larger than expected up close. Its stone walls are dark with age, weathered by generations of winter storms sweeping across the northern hills. Snow clings carefully to the edges of the roof and gathers upon the narrow window ledges where faint candlelight still glows inside. Somewhere deeper within the church, someone is awake. or perhaps simply unwilling to sleep just yet. The traveler passes quietly through the gate. The hinges creak gently behind them. Rows of gravestones lean at patient angles beneath the drifting snow, many so old their inscriptions have almost vanished entirely. Names softened by time. Dates worn smooth by decades of wind and winter rain. Snow settles over them all equally now. The traveler follows the narrow path towards the side of the church where the singing had seemed to come from. But no one is there. Only a small lantern burning beside the wooden door. Its flame flickers softly against the snow. The traveler notices tiny footprints nearby. Not recent, already half covered, small footprints. Perhaps children returning home earlier in the evening, or choir singers leaving after some quiet winter gathering. The village seems full of such gentle mysteries. Never alarming, never urgent, simply unexplained in the calmest possible way. The traveler brushes snowflakes from a coat sleeve and continues slowly around the churchyard. Behind the church, the land slopes gently downward towards open fields beyond the village. The snowfall stretches endlessly across them, silver beneath the dim winter sky. Stone walls divide the distant hills into soft white shapes barely visible through the storm. And far away, a single lantern glows near the edge of the moor. The traveler stops. The light is small, warm amber against the cold blue darkness. Too distant to make out clearly through the falling snow. Perhaps a farmhouse. Perhaps a shepherd's cottage standing alone upon the hills. Yet there is something comforting about it. That solitary glow beneath the endless winter sky. The traveler watches it quietly for a while. The wind brushes softly across the open fields. Snowflakes gather slowly upon shoulders and scarf. And gradually, an unusual calm begins settling deeper still. The traveler realizes they can no longer feel any hurry at all. No concern for tomorrow's journey. No thoughts of distant towns or crowded roads. Only the snowfall. Only the village. Only this peaceful winter night suspended somewhere between waking and sleep. Back within Bramblewick, another lamp goes dark behind a cottage window. Then another. The village is settling fully now. The traveler remembers the innkeeper's words. Don't stay out too long. At the time, the warning had sounded practical enough. But standing here now beneath the snowfall, the traveler begins to understand something else. Bramblewick does not merely become quiet at night. It becomes sleepy, profoundly sleepy, as though the snow itself carries rest within it. The traveler turns back towards the church. The lantern beside the wooden door continues glowing softly, and for the first time, another figure appears nearby. An elderly man wrapped in a long dark coat stands carefully brushing snow from the church steps with a wide broom. He moves slowly, unhurriedly, as though even the act of clearing snow should never disturb the stillness of the night. The traveler approaches politely. Good evening, they say softly. The old man looks up with gentle eyes beneath thick white eyebrows. Evening to you. His voice is warm and roughened by age. You're not from Bramblewick. It is not a question. No, the traveler admits. I arrived this evening. The old man nods slowly as though this explains everything. The first snowfall caught you, then. Again that phrase. The first snowfall. The traveler smiles faintly. People keep saying that. The old man rests both hands upon the broom handle. Winter behaves differently here. Snow drifts quietly between them for a moment. The traveler glances once more towards the distant lantern beyond the fields. Does someone live out there? The old man follows the gaze. For several seconds he says nothing at all. Then he smiles softly. Someone always keeps a lantern burning during the first snow. The answer explains very little. And yet somehow, it feels complete enough. The traveler finds they no longer wish to ask further questions. The old man resumes brushing snow carefully from the church steps. Soft scraping sounds drift through the quiet air. You should head back to the inn soon, he says gently. The deeper the snow grows, the sleepier this village becomes. The traveler thanks him quietly and begins walking back through the churchyard. Behind them, the old man continues his slow work beneath the lantern glow while snow falls steadily across the silent village of Bramblewick. By the time the traveler leaves the churchyard, the snow has grown deeper across the village lanes. Fresh drifts soften the edges of every path and doorstep. The stone walls lining the roads now resemble long white hills beneath the lantern glow. Even the footprints left only minutes earlier have already begun disappearing beneath the endless fall of snow. Bramblewick feels changed again somehow. Not dramatically, only quieter, slower, as though the night itself is gently folding closed around the village. The traveller walks carefully back towards the square. The wind has calmed almost entirely now. Only the soft hush of snowfall remains. It fills the air like silence made visible. The inn lies just beyond the curve of the road ahead, its windows glowing faintly through the storm. But before returning, the traveller pauses beside the frozen fountain in the center of the square. Snow has gathered thickly upon its stone edges. Icicles hang beneath the basin, glittering faintly whenever the lantern light catches them. During warmer months, the fountain is likely the heart of the village. Children running nearby. Market stalls gathered around the square. Voices drifting between the cottages. But tonight, winter has claimed everything. The traveller stands listening to the stillness, and slowly begins noticing how deeply the quiet settles here. Not empty quiet. Not lonely quiet. Protected quiet. The kind found inside old libraries after midnight. Or within snow-covered forests where even the trees seem asleep. The traveller closes their eyes briefly. The cold air brushes gently against their face. Somewhere far away, a gate creaks once in the wind. Then nothing again. When they open their eyes, another light has disappeared. Only a handful of lanterns still glow across Bramblewick now. One near the bakery. One beside the post office. One upstairs in a narrow cottage overlooking the square. And beyond the village, far across the snowy fields. The distant lantern upon the moor still burns steadily through the storm. The traveller watches it carefully. Something about that lonely amber light feels strangely important tonight. Not mysterious exactly. Simply comforting. A reminder that somewhere beyond the sleeping village, someone remains awake beneath the snowfall. The traveller imagines a quiet cottage standing alone among the hills. A kettle steaming upon a stove. A chair beside a fire. Perhaps an old shepherd reading beneath lantern light while snow gathers outside the windows. The thought brings an unexpected feeling of peace. In Bramblewick, even loneliness seems gentle somehow. A sudden burst of warm light spills briefly across the square. The door of the inn has opened again. The innkeeper steps outside wrapped in a thick wool shawl. She carries another lantern in one hand. For a moment she simply stands beneath the snowfall looking up towards the dark winter sky. Then she notices the traveller beside the fountain. "I thought you might still be wandering," she says softly. The traveller smiles apologetically. The village is difficult to leave once you start walking through it. "Aye," the innkeeper says quietly. It has that effect during the first snow. Snowflakes gather upon her silver hair and shoulders. The lantern she carries glows warmly between them. The traveller glances towards the distant light beyond the moor once more. "Who keeps the lantern burning out there?" they ask. The innkeeper follows the gaze. For a while she says nothing at all. Then she gives the smallest shrug. No one really knows anymore. The answer arrives so calmly that it hardly feels strange. It's always there during the first snowfall. Always. The traveller looks back towards the endless white hills beyond the village. The tiny lantern remains steady against the storm. How long has it been burning? The innkeeper smiles faintly. Longer than anyone in Bramblewick can remember. The snow continues falling around them. Soft. Patient. Without urgency. The innkeeper adjusts the lantern in her hand and nods towards the inn door. "You'll sleep well tonight," she says. Again that curious certainty. As though the village itself guarantees such things. The traveller follows her slowly across the square. Behind them, fresh snow already covers their footprints almost as quickly as they appear. Inside the inn, the warmth feels even softer now. The fire has burned lower in the hearth, glowing deep orange beneath settling ash. Most candles have been extinguished. Only a few remain flickering gently along the walls. The room is nearly empty. The elderly man who had slept beside the fire earlier is gone now. So is the woman by the window. Only silence and warmth remain. The innkeeper locks the front door carefully. A small metallic click echoes briefly through the quiet room. Then even that sound fades into stillness. "You're the last awake tonight," she says gently. The traveler glances towards the darkened windows. Beyond the glass, Bramblewick has almost vanished entirely beneath the storm. The cottages are little more than soft shapes now. Lantern lights glow dimly through curtains of falling snow. And somewhere beyond the hills, the lonely lantern upon the moor continues shining patiently through the winter night. The innkeeper lifts a candle from the counter. "Come along," she says softly. "I'll show you your room before the snow grows deeper still." And slowly, beneath the warm golden glow of candlelight, the traveler follows her upstairs while outside the snowfall continues over the sleeping village of Bramblewick. The staircase creaks softly beneath each step, old wood worn smooth by decades of winters. The traveler follows the innkeeper slowly along the narrow upper corridor while candlelight flickers gently against the dark paneled walls. Somewhere below, the fire settles quietly in the hearth. The sound is distant now. Warm, sleepy. Outside, snow continues brushing softly against the windows of the inn. A quiet, endless whisper carried across the hills of Bramblewick. The innkeeper stops beside a small wooden door near the end of the corridor. "This one faces the moor," she says softly. "Best room during snowfall." She places the candle upon a nearby table and turns the brass handle slowly. The hinges open with the faintest sigh. At once, warmth and stillness drift gently from inside the room. It is small, simple, and wonderfully cozy. A narrow bed rests beneath sloping ceilings crossed by dark oak beams blackened with age. Thick quilts lie folded neatly across the mattress. A wool blanket the color of winter moss hangs over the foot of the bed. Beside the window stands a cushioned armchair facing the snowy hills beyond the village. A tiny fireplace glows quietly in the corner, not roaring, only enough to keep the room comfortably warm through the night. The traveler steps inside slowly. The floorboards murmur softly beneath heavy boots. The innkeeper lifts the candle once more and places it beside the bed. Golden light fills the room immediately, chasing gentle shadows across the ceiling beams overhead. "There's hot water in the kettle," she says, "and extra blankets in the chest if the cold grows sharper overnight." The traveler thanks her quietly. For a moment, neither speaks. Snow drifts steadily beyond the small window beside the chair. The innkeeper glances towards it. "The snow always looks different from this room," she says at last. "How so?" the traveler asks. She smiles faintly, slower somehow. The traveler looks out across the white hills beyond Bramblewick. And perhaps she is right. The snowfall here does seem softer, gentler, as though the entire world beyond the glass has settled into some peaceful dream. The innkeeper moves towards the doorway, but before leaving, she pauses. "If you wake during the night," she says quietly, "look towards the moor. The lantern, her smile deepens slightly. It's comforting on snowy nights." Then, with a small nod, she leaves the room. The door closes softly behind her, and at last, the traveler is alone. For several moments, nothing moves except the snow beyond the window. The traveler removes their coat slowly and hangs it beside the door. Gloves, scarf, boots damp with melting frost. Each small action feels unusually calm here, unhurried, as though Bramblewick itself encourages slower movements. The traveler pours steaming water from the kettle into a small ceramic cup resting nearby. A faint smell of chamomile rises gently through the warm room. Outside, the wind brushes softly against the roof. Not harsh, only enough to remind the traveler how cold the hills beyond the inn must now be. The armchair beside the window proves impossible to resist. The traveler settles into it beneath the wool blanket and gazes out across the sleeping village. From up here, Bramblewick appears almost entirely buried beneath snow. The lanes have vanished into soft white paths. Cottage roofs curve beneath thick winter drifts. Only the occasional lantern still glows faintly between the falling flakes. Most windows are dark now. The entire village is asleep beneath the storm. And there, far beyond the last cottages, the distant lantern still burns upon the moor. Small, steady, unmoving against the endless snowfall. The traveler watches it quietly while sipping warm tea. Sleepiness settles deeper with every passing minute. The kind that arrives slowly during winter evenings beside fires and snow-covered windows. Not sudden exhaustion, only peace. The candle beside the bed flickers softly. Its glow dances lazily across the ceiling beams overhead. Somewhere downstairs, a door closes gently. Then silence returns once more. The traveler leans back further into the chair. Outside, snow continues falling across Bramblewick with endless patience. The same snowfall touching rooftops, church stones, garden walls, and distant hills beyond the village. The traveler begins wondering how many winters this village has seen. How many nights exactly like this one? Travelers arriving through storms, lanterns glowing beside snowy roads, villagers settling quietly into sleep while the wind moved softly across the moor. Perhaps hundreds, perhaps more. The thought feels strangely comforting, as though tonight is only one peaceful winter evening in a long chain of peaceful winter evenings stretching far back through time. The tea grows warmer in tired hands. The room grows softer, the snow falls slower, and little by little, the traveler feels the edges of wakefulness beginning to blur gently into sleep. Some time later, the traveler wakes briefly, not fully, only enough to notice the quiet. The candle beside the bed has burned lower now, its small flame flickering gently within a pool of melted wax. The room glows dim amber beneath the sloping ceiling beams. For a moment, the traveler remains perfectly still beneath the heavy quilts, listening. The inn is silent, no footsteps below, no voices drifting through the corridor. Even the fire downstairs seems to have settled entirely into ash. Only the snowfall remains, soft against the windows, soft against the roof, soft across the sleeping village beyond. The traveler closes their eyes again for a few peaceful seconds. But something draws them gently back towards wakefulness. Not alarm, not noise, only curiosity. Slowly, they turn towards the window beside the chair. The moor beyond Bramblewick lies pale beneath the winter sky. And there, still glowing through the endless snowfall, burns the distant lantern. The traveler watches it quietly from the warmth of the bed. At this hour, the light feels even farther away somehow. Lonelier perhaps, yet no less comforting. It shines with steady patience against the storm, untouched by wind or darkness. The traveler remembers the old man beside the church. Someone always keeps a lantern burning during the first snow. Outside, midnight settles fully over Bramblewick. The church bell sounds slowly across the hills. 12 deep chimes rolling one after another through the snowy dark, each note softer than the last. The traveler listens carefully as the sound drifts away into the storm. Then silence returns once more. A deeper silence now, the sort found only in places where every living thing has fallen asleep. The traveler wonders whether anyone at all remains awake in the village besides themselves. Perhaps the innkeeper below, perhaps the unseen keeper of the lantern upon the moor, or perhaps no one. Perhaps Bramblewick itself simply continues breathing softly beneath the snow while its people dream behind shuttered windows. The thought feels oddly peaceful. The traveler slips carefully from the bed and crosses the room towards the window. The floorboards murmur faintly beneath stockinged feet. Cold glass greets tired fingertips. Outside, the snowfall has become finer now, smaller flakes drifting slowly through the pale blue darkness. The village appears transformed beneath midnight. Every rooftop smooth and white. Every lane softened into silence. Lanterns nearly buried beneath snow-covered hoods. The church tower rises quietly above everything like an old guardian watching over sleeping cottages. And beyond it all, the endless hills of the moor disappearing into winter mist. The traveler notices fresh tracks crossing the square below, very faint now beneath new snow, perhaps left by the innkeeper locking the door earlier, or by someone returning home late before the storm deepened. But there are no new footsteps now. No movement at all. Bramblewick sleeps deeply. The traveler opens the window slightly. At once, cold winter air drifts softly into the room carrying the clean scent of snow and distant pine. The silence outside feels immense. Not empty, simply vast, as though the snowfall has wrapped the entire countryside in layers of quiet. Far away, an owl calls once across the hills. The sound fades almost immediately into the storm. The traveler rests against the window frame watching snow gather slowly upon the inn roof below. Time feels different here tonight. Slower, gentler, as though the hours themselves have grown sleepy beneath the snowfall. After a while, the traveler notices something unusual. The distant lantern upon the moor appears brighter now. Not dramatically, only enough to stand more clearly against the dark hills beyond Bramblewick. Its warm amber glow flickers softly through the storm. And though the traveler knows it must be impossible from such a distance, they begin imagining they can almost see a small cottage surrounding it. A low roof beneath deep snow. Warm windows glowing against the winter night. Perhaps someone inside pouring tea beside a fire, reading quietly beneath lantern light while the storm drifts endlessly across the moor. The image settles warmly in the traveler's mind. Outside, the snowfall continues. Patient, endless, without hurry. And gradually, standing beside the cold window in the stillness of midnight, the traveler begins to feel wonderfully tired once more. Not the sharp tiredness of long journeys. Not exhaustion, only the deep, peaceful drowsiness carried by winter nights and falling snow. The traveler closes the window carefully. The latch clicks softly into place. Then they return slowly to the warmth of the bed while the distant lantern continues glowing faithfully beyond the sleeping village of Bramblewick. Within moments, the heavy quilts feel wonderfully warm again. The traveler sinks deeper into them. The candle flame flickers once beside the bed, twice, then steadies. Outside, snow brushes softly against the window pane, and little by little, midnight drifts gently onwards across the quiet hills of northern England. The night deepens quietly around Bramblewick. Hours seem to pass without measure beneath the snowfall. The traveler sleeps for a while, wakes briefly, then drifts once more into that gentle place between dreams and distant awareness where winter nights often carry wandering thoughts like snowflakes upon the wind. At some uncertain hour before morning, the traveler opens their eyes again. The room is darker now. The candle beside the bed has long since gone out, leaving only the pale blue glow of snowlight spilling softly through the window. For several moments, the traveler simply lies still beneath the quilts listening to the storm. But the snowfall has changed. It no longer whispers against the roof with restless movement. Now it falls almost silently, soft enough that the world beyond the windows seems suspended entirely outside time. The traveler turns slowly towards the glass. And there, beyond the sleeping village, the lantern still burns. Its amber glow appears gentler now, blurred slightly by drifting snow and winter mist upon the moor. Yet somehow it feels nearer than before. The traveler cannot explain why. Perhaps because the rest of the world has faded so completely into darkness. Or perhaps because certain lights always seem closer during lonely winter nights. Sleep still lingers heavily behind tired eyes. And without fully deciding to do so, the traveler rises quietly from the bed once more. The room feels colder now that the fire has burned low. A pale silver light rests across the floorboards and blankets like moonlight through water. Slowly, carefully, the traveler pulls on boots and coat again. The familiar motions feel dreamlike at this hour. Scarf wrapped loosely, gloves drawn over sleepy hands. Every sound softened by the deep silence surrounding the inn. When the traveler finally opens the bedroom door, the corridor beyond lies dark and still. Only faint blue winter light reaches the staircase from below. The inn sleeps deeply. Each step downstairs creaks softly beneath careful feet. The traveler pauses once near the bottom, listening for movement. Nothing, no voices, no shifting chairs, only the endless hush of snow beyond the walls. The fire in the hearth has collapsed into dim red embers glowing beneath grey ash. The room smells faintly of wood smoke and extinguished candles. The traveler crosses slowly towards the front door. For a brief moment, they hesitate. It seems almost strange to leave the warmth of the inn at such an hour. Yet the village outside feels less forbidding than peaceful somehow, as though the snowfall itself is watching gently over Bramblewick tonight. The latch lifts with a quiet metallic click. Cold air slips softly into the inn. And once again, the traveler steps into the snow. The village appears transformed beneath the final hours of night. Snowdrifts glow pale beneath the sky. The cottages stand silent beneath thick white roofs. Not a single lantern remains lit now within Bramblewick itself. Only the distant light upon the moor. The traveler begins walking slowly through the square. Fresh snow muffles every footstep almost entirely. The fountain rests frozen beneath smooth white curves. The church tower disappears halfway into drifting mist beyond the rooftops. Everything feels softer now, edges blurred by winter, time blurred by sleepiness. The traveler passes through the empty lanes towards the edge of the village where the open fields begin. The farther they walk, the quieter the world becomes. Soon even the outlines of Bramblewick grow faint behind the storm. Only the distant lantern remains clear ahead, its warm glow resting patiently beyond the hills. The traveler reaches the old stone wall bordering the moor and stops there for a while. Snow has gathered thickly upon the wall's uneven surface. Beyond it stretch endless white fields fading slowly into darkness. The lantern flickers gently far away among the drifting snow. The traveler rests gloved hands upon the cold stone and gazes out across the sleeping land. A strange feeling settles over the moment. Not mystery, not uncertainty, only calm recognition, as though this lantern has always existed here. As though winter itself would feel incomplete without it glowing quietly across the moor during the first snowfall. The traveler wonders how many others have stood here over the years watching the same distant light through storms exactly like this one. Perhaps weary travelers, perhaps villagers unable to sleep, perhaps children gazing from frosted windows while snow buried the hills around Bramblewick. The thought drifts softly through the traveler's mind before fading once more into stillness. No answers seem necessary tonight. Only the snowfall, only the lantern, only the deep winter quiet stretching endlessly across the northern hills. The traveler closes tired eyes for a moment beneath the cold wind. Snowflakes brush gently across scarf and coat, and somewhere within the silence comes the faintest sound of a bell. Not the church bell, smaller than that, softer, as though carried from very far away across the sleeping moor. The traveler listens carefully, but after a few moments, the sound fades once more into the snowfall. Perhaps it was only the wind moving through distant gates, or perhaps certain sounds belong only to winter nights like these. The traveler exhales slowly into the cold air. White breath disappears instantly into the storm. Then at last, feeling sleepiness returning once more like a heavy wool blanket settling gently over the mind, the traveler turns back towards the quiet village lights of Bramblewick. The walk back through Bramblewick feels slower somehow. Sleepier. The traveler moves quietly through the snow-covered lanes while the village rests untouched beneath the fading storm. Behind them, the lantern upon the moor continues glowing faintly through the drifting white distance. Ahead, the inn waits in darkness at the edge of the square. The snowfall has nearly stopped now. Only the occasional flake still wanders gently from the pale winter sky. The clouds above Bramblewick have begun thinning at last, revealing faint traces of moonlight beyond them. A soft silver glow settles across the village rooftops. Everything appears hushed beneath it. Still, peaceful. The traveler pauses beside the frozen fountain once more. The square is even quieter now than before. No wind touches the lanterns. No shutters creak. No voices drift from behind cottage walls. It feels as though the entire village has fallen into the deepest sleep imaginable. The traveler looks up towards the church tower. Its clock face glows dim and pale through the remaining mist. The hands move steadily towards morning. Not quickly. Nothing in Bramblewick seems to move quickly during snowfall. The traveler notices their own footprints trailing softly behind across the untouched snow. Already the edges blur beneath fresh frost settling over the village. By dawn, they will likely vanish entirely. The thought feels oddly comforting, as though winter here gently erases all signs of hurry. At the inn door, the traveler brushes snow carefully from coat sleeves and boots before stepping back inside. Warmth greets them once more. Gentle and familiar now. The embers in the hearth still glow faintly red beneath soft layers of ash. The great room remains empty. Only the old clock above the fireplace continues ticking quietly through the dark. Tick, tick, tick. The sound feels unusually soothing at this hour. The traveler stands listening to it for a little while. Outside, the final snowflakes drift across the sleeping village. Inside, the inn breathes softly with settling wood and fading warmth. Everything seems suspended between night and morning. The traveler adds a small log carefully to the fire. Soon tiny flames begin flickering once more among the embers. A warm orange glow slowly spreads across the room. Shadows dance lazily along the wooden beams overhead. The traveler pours the last of the water from the kettle into a cup and sits once again beside the fire. The chair creaks softly beneath tired weight. Sleepiness returns immediately, heavier now, deeper, the kind that settles slowly after long winter walks and silent snowfall. For a time, the traveler simply watches the flames. Outside, Bramblewick remains buried beneath snow and silence. The traveler imagines the villagers asleep within their cottages. Blankets pulled high against the cold. Fires burning low in quiet hearths. Dreams drifting gently through warm rooms while winter rests softly beyond the windows. Even the distant lantern upon the moor has grown faint now, barely visible through the paling dark. Yet somehow the traveler knows it still burns there patiently among the hills. A steady light waiting through the final hours before dawn. The fire crackles quietly. The clock continues its gentle ticking. And little by little, the dark outside begins to soften. Not sunrise yet. Only the first suggestion of morning somewhere beyond the snowy clouds. The traveler feels their eyes closing slowly beside the warmth of the hearth. The village remains utterly still. Then, at last, from somewhere high above the sleeping rooftops, comes the first bell of morning. Deep, slow, peaceful, the sound drifts gently across Bramblewick and out over the white hills beyond. One bell, then another, then silence once more. The traveler listens carefully as the final echo fades into the pale winter air. Morning is approaching, and with it, the long snowy night over Bramblewick begins quietly drawing towards its end. Morning arrives slowly over Bramblewick, not with sudden sunlight or hurried movement, only with a gradual softening of the sky beyond the snow-covered hills. Pale winter light spreads gently across the village rooftops while the final traces of night drift quietly away. The traveler wakes in the armchair beside the fire. At some point, sleep had arrived naturally there in the warmth of the hearth while the storm faded beyond the inn windows. The room is still dim. The fire glows softly beneath fresh logs. And outside, dawn rests peacefully upon the village. For several moments, the traveler simply watches the morning light gather across the square. The snowfall has ended at last. Everything beyond the glass lies perfectly white and untouched beneath the early sky. The fountain, the churchyard paths, the narrow lanes winding between cottages, all covered beneath deep, unbroken snow. Bramblewick appears quieter than ever in the first light of morning. Then, slowly, the village begins waking. A thin ribbon of chimney smoke rises from a cottage near the bakery. A lantern flickers softly to life beside the post office door. Farther along the lane, someone opens shutters carefully against the cold morning air. Small signs of life returning after the long winter night. The traveler notices something else too. The distant lantern upon the moor is gone. The hills beyond the village now stretch pale and empty beneath the dawn. No amber glow remains among the drifting snow. Only endless white fields beneath the soft grey sky. And strangely, its absence feels perfectly natural, as though the lantern belonged only to the snowfall itself. The traveler stands slowly and crosses towards the window. Below, fresh footprints appear near the square. The baker beginning his morning rounds perhaps, or the innkeeper scattering salt along the icy paths outside. The village is waking carefully, quietly, as though no one wishes to disturb the peace left behind by the storm. A gentle knock comes at the door. The innkeeper enters carrying a small tray with tea, toast, and a tiny pot of marmalade. "Morning," she says warmly. The traveler smiles sleepily. "Morning." The innkeeper glances out towards the snowy hills. The storm passed cleanly in the end. Her voice carries quiet satisfaction, as though the snowfall behaved exactly as expected. The traveler hesitates briefly before asking the question, lingering softly since midnight. "The lantern beyond the moor." The innkeeper smiles before they can finish. "Gone now." The traveler nods. "Aye." She sets the tray carefully upon the table beside the fire. "It never stays after dawn." Again, she says this with such calm certainty that it feels less like folklore and more like weather. The traveler moves back towards the chair beside the hearth. The tea smells wonderfully warm. Strong black tea with a little milk. Outside, pale morning light brightens slowly across the snow-covered village. The innkeeper pauses near the doorway. "You slept well, then?" The traveler thinks for a moment. They had. Wonderfully well, deeper than they could remember sleeping in many months. As though the snowfall itself had carried every restless thought quietly away into the night. "Yes," they answer softly. "I think I did." The innkeeper smiles knowingly. The first snowfall tends to do that. Then she leaves the traveler alone once more with the gentle crackle of the fire and the peaceful winter morning beyond the window. For a while, the traveler remains there quietly drinking tea beside the hearth. The village continues waking little by little outside. A man clears snow from the church steps with slow, steady movements. The lantern beyond the moor. The innkeeper smiles before they can finish. Gone now. The traveler nods. Aye. She sets the tray carefully upon the table beside the fire. It never stays after dawn. Again, she says this with such calm certainty that it feels less like folklore and more like weather. The traveler moves back towards the chair beside the hearth. The tea smells wonderfully warm. Strong black tea with a little milk. Outside, pale morning light brightens slowly across the snow-covered village. The innkeeper pauses near the doorway. You slept well, then? The traveler thinks for a moment. They had. Wonderfully well, deeper than they could remember sleeping in many months. As though the snowfall itself had carried every restless thought quietly away into the night. Yes, they answer softly. I think I did. The innkeeper smiles knowingly. The first snowfall tends to do that. Then she leaves the traveler alone once more with the gentle crackle of the fire and the peaceful winter morning beyond the window. For a while, the traveler remains there quietly drinking tea beside the hearth. The village continues waking little by little outside. A man clears snow from the church steps with slow, steady movements. Children bundled in scarves leave tiny tracks beside the square. Smoke rises higher into the pale air from cottage chimneys across Bramblewick. The world feels wonderfully unhurried here, as though winter itself has slowed everything to a kinder pace. Eventually, the traveler gathers coat and gloves once more. The road onwards will need to be taken soon enough. Buses will begin running again after the snowplows clear the northern road. Other towns. Other journeys. Yet part of the traveler already knows that Bramblewick will remain in memory long after winter passes. Not because of mystery, not because of the lantern upon the moor, but because of the quiet. The deep and gentle quiet that settled over the village during snowfall. A kind of peace rarely found elsewhere. Before leaving the room, the traveler pauses one final time beside the window. Snowlight glows softly across the rooftops. The church bell rings gently through the clear winter air. And somewhere beyond the white hills surrounding Bramblewick, another snowfall waits patiently for another winter night. The traveler smiles softly, then turns away from the window while morning settles peacefully across the sleepy village beneath the snow.